So what made you go right on your phone and make a phone call right away?
Just kind of a lack of awareness of what to do, and because I wanted to make sure. So my thought process was someone is shot, someone is dying in front of me, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is the government. The government is going to want to control this narrative as fast as possible. They're going to want to have a story. They're going to want to defend themselves. That's just what governments do. It's
You thought all that in the heat of the moment?
yes. So that's why I recorded it, because if they try to deny it and say, "Oh no, she was not killed," well, then I have footage. And I wanted to call someone outside of the scene so that if anything happened to me and there was an attempt to suppress it, silence it, seize my devices, shut it down, someone could say, "No, I spoke to my nephew, whoever my uncle was just the first one that came to mind, but I spoke to this person that day at this time. If you check the call history, there it is. Call received at this time, right after the shooting." And that was the
You were
nature of the discussion.
thinking that much
Yes, yes,
in that heated scene.
yes, yes,
You were on your toes like that?
yes.
Dude, you need to be around me
I
more.
I don't I don't trust government. Period.
You're quick on your feet.
And it turns out that it not necessarily the right thing to do, but it certainly was not a useless course of action, because the
Can I
video and
jump in?
everything. Yeah, I'm sorry to talk
No,
so
you're
much, but you
fine.
can go ahead.
No, you're totally fine. I agree. That you were calm, but isn't it odd that everybody else in the room behaved the same way? They were all very calm too. And when Ashley Babbitt was in the room, she's looking towards that area, very antsy, like as if something's gonna happen. And I don't know if you saw the same footage that I did. I could send it to you
Yeah,
so
if you
that you
want
could,
to post it
yeah,
in here so we could watch
of
it.
course.
Yeah, she looks over at Byrd a few times and kind of jumps up and down and kind of like
Yeah.
jumping up and down a little bit, and she's looking in the direction where Byrd is.
And I
Um,
wanted to ask one other quick thing. Do you know who Patrick Byrne is?
No.
All right, so Patrick Byrne paid for a group of J6ers to arrive at J6 in a private plane,
Okay.
and he confessed in his face. Um, well, I was accusing him of paying for Jaden X, his flight, but he admitted to paying for a whole group of people. Um, so you don't know him at all?
No.
Okay.
Who is this person? Sorry, guys, I'm just hopping back in.
I'm talking
Patrick
about
Byrne.
Patrick Byrne.
Patrick Byrne paid for John Sullivan to be there.
Yeah,
Yes.
Interesting. I was locked up with John.
And Enrico Terrio, the whole group of people.
yeah. What do you want to share anything about this topic, Dominic?
Yeah, so I literally just hopped in, hearing I guess you guys talk about that, and um, what I'll say about John Sullivan is, certainly I was aware of who he was prior to January 6th. And so, of course, we're all familiar with what he did and what he was a part of on January 6th. And interestingly enough, after spending 14 days without ever leaving my cell in Petersburg, I was excited to finally leave. And I knew at that point I was going to the DC jail, and I get processed in. Typically, when you come into the DC jail, you're brought into this processing area. I still remember exactly what it looked like. They gave us 2 hot dogs. It was gross. At dinner, I didn't eat all day, but I saw everybody that came in that day. A lot of Hispanics, some DC natives, but I never saw John Sullivan come in. But I did see John Sullivan, and I got there at about 7 in the morning. I was eventually brought back to a unit called, that would be South 2, the intake unit, and I see who I did not realize was John Sullivan at the time, but I see this, kind of scrawny, uh, uh, mulatto man with a black man bun, which was, kind of an interesting look. And something in my head just kind of clicked. I'm like, man, that guy, he looks so familiar. And for the first 2 days, because I was on immediately placed on involuntary protective custody status. All January 6th defendants were. And I want to say it was like a Wednesday or a Thursday that I got there. And I remember it was November 16th, so whatever day that was. We weren't allowed out of our cells at all. And when I finally was allowed out to do the intake process, and actually, you meet with the case managers, and there's a guy that's in there. It's who I later found out was John Sullivan. But I hear this guy talking about, right wing media this, right wing media that, and saying he sold footage. And all of a sudden, it clicked, and I said, "Oh my God, that's John Sullivan." But I didn't have an opportunity to talk to him. But later that night, when you're on protective custody, involuntary or otherwise, in the intake process, you're not allowed to interact with the everybody else that comes through the processing center. So while other inmates were allowed 3 hours out every single day, we were allowed 1 hour out when they decided to grant that privilege to us. So we're eventually allowed out. We'll call that Friday. It must have been Friday because on Saturday and Sunday you're wholly locked down. Um, and you're brought out. There was like seven of us. It was myself, Frank Justino, John Sullivan, and some child molesters, I guess. Eventually, Jason Wallace, Taylor Donatakis, and Jared Owens came through. But I immediately approached John Sullivan in everybody was running to the phones, and John walked into the basketball area, and I walk up and said, "You're John fucking Sullivan, aren't you?" And he just goes, "Yeah, but whoa, man, whoa, like, I gotta talk to you. I gotta talk to you. What they're saying about me is totally untrue." And like, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "I'm not what they've made me out to be." And I said very firmly, I said, "John, I know exactly who you are, and I'm just glad to know that you're real." And he's like, "No, man, I'm very real, but like my parents are all Trump supporters. My brother's a Trump supporter, and they've got it all wrong." And I wasn't looking for a confrontation or anything like that. But I'm like, okay, like here's this character that like a lot of people have, said, is this guy, is he real? Is he really going to go to jail? And I found out later that that was actually the day that he was convicted. Now, I spent about, God, I've got it all on my calendar, maybe five. No, it was at least a week. They told me it would be 24 hours and I would be brought over to CTF with all the January 6th guys. It took about a week. And, John Sullivan was not brought over to the January 6th pod because he was, I don't know if that was, there was a very clear intake process when you actually got to the J6 pod. And somehow people on the outside knew, and I guess now you know how to look it up, but they were very aware. The people on the outside, Freedom Corner, and the those that were interested in our situation on the outside knew everybody that came into the jail. So for whatever reason, John Sullivan was not allowed over there, and I eventually ran into him again back in April when I was going through a period of unwarranted, I might add, solitary confinement again. And the first thing, because I'm one of maybe two white guys. Actually, no, I guess at that time I was the only white guy on the tier. And they're like, "Hey, what are you, some kind of fucking weirdo?" And I said, "Nah, man, I'm a J6er. I'm January 6th." They're like, "Oh, shit. So you know Utah?" And I'm like, "Utah?" And I'm like, "Oh, you mean John Sullivan?" And they're all like, "Yeah, man, fuck that, woo, woo, woo." And I'm like, what do you mean? What's he doing? Why is he here?" They said, "Man, we don't know why the fuck that blankety blank is here." And I said, "Why are y'all hating on him so much?" And they said, "Man, that motherfucker said he's a CIA agent, and that white bitch that got shot is a CIA agent too. And he
Meek,
ain't."
you were the one that told me that.
Yeah. And I heard that from at least four, maybe five different people, because I was moved around constantly on that unit, and it's all solitary. At least when you're on PC or IO, involuntary protective custody. And so four different people told me that John Sullivan had independently told them that he was a CIA agent. And again, I'm not saying Ashley Babbitt is a CIA agent. but I am saying that John Sullivan said that they both were, and that he was never going to prison. And probably I've got two funny stories about John Sullivan. The first was when he got sentenced. Um, because I was not near him. He was actually about 4 doors down from Taylor Toronto, who is another very interesting guy. But he comes back from sentencing, and I just have the only time you interact with people in that unit if you're on protective custody is when you're being taken to a shower. And John walks back after sentencing, and he goes, "Hey, Box, I got 5 years, 60 months." Or he said, I got 72 months, 5 years. I said, "That's 6 years." He goes, "Damn, are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, no, I can do math." He goes, "Shit." And walks back to his he always had his light off. He never, like, I don't know what he was doing, but like he never came out to wreck. He always stayed in his cell, had the lights off. And then he was so what was really funny about John Sullivan is if you ever heard him talk or um engage anyway, he doesn't act like he's from the hood or from the street. But when he was incarcerated, he like really played up the urban element and tried to fit in, and they absolutely hated him. And there was this guy that they called Duke that when he was when he was going to a shower one day, or no, I'm sorry, when John was going to a shower one day, they sprayed the term is shitting him down. So they sprayed piss and shit all over him, and
Over Sullivan?
yeah, they all I don't know how much got on him because I didn't see it, but
Dude, I'd have been fighting.
yeah, well, John's a very small guy, and you're behind a door, so that happened. And the interesting thing to me now is, and he and I had very few conversations through kites because I don't know who this guy is. Like, I have a lot of questions about him, but that was the last I saw of him. What I will say is when he actually left the DC jail to go off to the BOP, was taken, as far as I was told, was taken to Northern Neck and then brought back to the DC jail. So I don't know if he ever actually, I don't know where he went BOP wise. But what I'm really interested in is, and he's actually, so Andrew and I've talked about this. I said, you know what better person to get on one of these spaces than John Sullivan? And if
I
anybody,
wish.
he's on Facebook, he's on Instagram. I don't know if he's on X, but all he does now is post these AI videos of himself, and then reposts videos like ice raids and like war footage from Ukraine. But I got like two responses from him, and I'm not going to say any names, but it's kind of like some of the posts you see from certain members of the independent media that are obviously 100% AI written. And so, like, I don't even know who I was talking to because it's not the guy that I talked to in jail. And if you look through some of the posts that are on his public profiles, it's like it's just very bizarre. And so, yep, and he's definitely a real person. Whether or not he's a CIA agent, I can't say, but he did make those claims repeatedly, and I have no idea what he's doing now or where he's at. But I tried to get him on a space, and you know what? Actually, I think I sent it to Andrew. He did say when when he's able to decompress a little bit, he would be willing to do it. So I'd love to talk to him. I'd love to get more of his story, but yeah, John Sullivan had a man bun and got poop and pee thrown on him.
Oh wow, dude!
Oh
If somebody
my.
throws piss and shit on you, how do you not fight them instantly?
Well, he was behind the door, so
Well, so did it actually get on him?
no, yeah, it did because they had to decontaminate him, or I don't know what the process
Wow.
was, but yeah, the guy came down. I mean, it was kind of like, it's really hard to get your hands on somebody on that unit, like, unless you're taken out to rec, and there's really only one place worse you could go than so on South One, which is solitary, you can still get like a reduced commissary. If you go to North One, which is like the whole, and yeah, so that was it really. They're the two like
Was it
legitimate.
like did they decontaminate like Monsters Inc. when the monster got the sock on his back? What was it? What they say it was? Code something.
I don't
What
know,
was
but
that?
I've not seen it, but I know that he was not well liked. And I'm just interested. He's got a very interesting background. I think he might just be an opportunist that's been at the right place at the right time a lot. But just I
So
would say look him up. His social media is very
is
interesting now.
is this going to be the time when Thomas tells us that him and John Sullivan are good friends?
No chance.
Oh, damn it! I thought you were
No,
going to give us something
but
juicy, man.
on on that note, I was another J6 guy came through. Do you know the judge's son, Mustafsky?
Wustowski.
He's got long hair and looks kind of crazy.
He's fucking nuts. But the way I'm gonna link this is this: a lot of these people who were in that building, some of them are just straight up weird. And this dude, Mustafsky's introduction to prison was getting choked unconscious twice because he was put in a cell with a dude coming from a medium to a low before release. And apparently, the dude took issue with Mustafsky, who decided that the lights will be on so I could read my Torah whenever I want. And obviously, you
Mm.
don't provoke these people who have probably been stabbed or had to fight for their life in jail, and really, you don't belong
Not in
there.
a low.
No, no,
That
no.
shit
The
ain't
guy
happening
was
in a
coming
low.
from a medium, is what I'm saying. So
Dude, I was in a
he
medium. It was
he
all
dealt with
like
plenty
none of
of
that shit
bullshit. Well,
happened.
the guy who was coming down had been through some shit, and he was not dealing with Mustafi, so he choked him unconscious not once but twice. The kid then gets to our unit and immediately begins a beef with the entire Muslim car by refusing to vacate the prayer room during their time. I couldn't believe someone like this. And he would try to work out with me in jail, and he couldn't do a push up. He couldn't do a sit up. He couldn't do anything. And
Why was
he's
he trying to work out if he couldn't do a push up?
I have no idea what is he must have he said he had 7 months and he was going to use this time to improve himself. And he would try to kind of hang out and work out with me and out because I guess he felt like we were two outcasts together. But I'm like, if I'm an outcast, I'm one with common sense. I'm not picking fights with the people in prison. You
So
are.
you didn't have a car. You were
I
kind
was
of
in
you
the
were
white
on
guy
man time.
car. The white guys.
You were in the white car.
Yeah, it was a very small group of us because Danbury is like a notorious pedophile yard. Like really, really pedoed up. Chomos
And you
are
were
the
in the
primary.
low, obviously, right?
Yes.
You were in a low.
Yes. There were like four
Is
of
he?
us that kind of bonded up, and he was brought in because he was the fifth white guy that showed up with no chomo charges, and
Yeah, dude. I heard the low was infested with
it's
chomos.
Yeah,
terrible.
my man Ian Bick was at Danbury. He does Locked In with Ian Bick. It's a great podcast about prison, and he interviews a lot of people.
It was
I know.
just
I see Ray Chambers laughing at that. He must know who I'm talking about. I love Ian Bick.
it was a weird experience, but the overall point is some of these people who were in the Capitol that day are just they're not some of them are just not right in the head, and this dude definitely qualified. I think John Sullivan would qualify running around claiming to be in the CIA, selling his footage, and then getting shit thrown on. They're not fighters. They're not going to stand up for themselves. This dude got, like I said, choked unconscious twice. Did you think he ever threw a punch back? No, he just got choked unconscious twice and didn't know what to do. No sense of self defense, no self
Yeah.
preservation to maybe try to de
Well,
escalate
I don't
and
think
not turn the lights on when the guy tried to sleep. You know what I
I don't
mean?
think you have to be. You don't have to be a tough guy to be in the CIA.
No, you don't have to
I
be a.
met. I was incarcerated with CIA agent Brian Raymond. I always say that I thought the dude was a librarian. Um, but I don't know if John's in the CIA. I definitely think he's got the military family background. Was it naval intelligence or whatever? Um, And I think he was, and I don't know. And the thing about Brian Raymond, who I know for a fact was actually a CIA operative, was he, you never really leave the farm. So I think John was probably just saying things to get a reaction. I do think he was, or could have been definitely was a bad actor. He wasn't one of us. But I don't think he was in the CIA. I don't
Yeah,
think.
that's where I was going with this. Is I think these people are just saying shit. They're not
Well,
right in the head.
do you think John Sullivan was in the Peace Corps?
I have
I'm
no
fucking
idea
with
about that. But he was
Secret.
dude. Well, Tom, dude, you missed it, Dom. Thomas said earlier that the Peace Corps was like a platform to end up in the
It
CIA.
can be, yeah. You can,
It can
Absolutely.
be.
yeah, 100%. It can be a stepping stone for you into any kind of government agency, but the CIA is one avenue you could take from it.
So did you have to partake in the Babbitt scene in order to be considered?
One of the boxes checked.
It,
Crisis actor.
Thomas, you may have already addressed this, but I'm curious because I respectfully I had no idea who you were until Andrew brought you to my attention. But I did see a video recently. I'm sure again you're familiar with what I'm talking about, where you indicated that Ashley was warned. Were you just speaking in the moment, or did you actually hear her get warned to,
No,
I
I'm
guess, vacate the area?
speaking strictly regarding my own experience, not what anyone else. So if I say she wasn't warned, because I did bring it up earlier, I don't know what anyone else other than myself heard, noticed, saw, felt in the room, and I don't speak to that. So if I hear someone say stop and I indicate it came from a police officer, I don't know that she would have heard it. I don't know that she would, because I was also yelling stop. People in the crowd were saying gun. There's no, you can't, in a room like that with
That
everything
was
going on.
Sullivan. Sullivan said gun. There's a gun. There's a gun. He's got a
Yeah,
gun.
but my point being, you can't, in that moment, you can't go, oh, it's clearly the uniformed officer in this direction speaking to myself with regards to what I need to do and there's just no way. There's too much insanity
Dude, if
playing
I
out.
heard somebody say there's a gun, I think I would have ran out of the door at that point. Just
And I
me
and
personally.
I just want I agree. I just want to know again because the people that I do know who are in the kill room, have refused to talk about it other than John Sullivan. But are you, and just because there is a large contingency of people on social media that still posit that Ashley Babbitt never died, or can you confirm that she was murdered by Officer Michael Byrd?
Yeah, she's dead. She was murdered.
Thank you.
Well, Thomas made a actually something that stuck with me last time I talked to him before this. Um, he said that the government doesn't settle lawsuits for people that aren't dead. So I think that's a good point. Obviously, unless the government is in on it for anybody that wants to continue down the rabbit hole. But it's a good fucking point. Like, how would there be a settlement if it's not a confirmed? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's a valid point to make that Thomas brought up. Very simple, very logical. And like I said to Thomas before the space, we don't ever know that we're right. We just watched video because we were there that day and it affected our cases. So um, we there's a lot of people that wonder about shit, and the fact that people waited 4 years, obviously for good reasons, to not put out footage and not talk about their experience of January 6th because they didn't want to get more charges. They weren't pardoned yet. We get it. But when there's nobody answering any questions, those voids get filled with theories. That's just what happens. That's going to happen naturally.
Well, that's, if I
And
can interrupt you, I'm sorry, but isn't that
yeah,
exactly what they say happened with the JFK shooting as well? And people to this day think he survived and no one ever died. And it's the same thing because no one who was there
yeah,
talked about it. No one, and that one's got a whole lot more insanity surrounding it, to be honest. But if you think about it, one of their own internal assessments, at least from the FBI, was that by not talking about this, we're making this worse because people are going to try to figure it out and come up with
yeah,
reasons. It's the same, it mirrors it exactly. People fill in the
yeah.
blanks with what they think could happen. But
And that's why I think it's awesome and important that people like you come on here and answer questions, and you're an open book. And anybody that does come on to any space and they're willing to, I mean, even Gina, I mean, you had Gina come on and answer shit. I mean, we had Copeland. We've had so many people that have answered shit. And the first thing that, obviously somebody that isn't going to show up and answer questions, I think that's a major red flag. If you're afraid to just be you and be honest, that's why when you were down to do it, I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I've been looking for this guy. I've been watching footage on you and so many other people for years that finally the lawsuit ended. You could talk about stuff, and I did. There was one person that I forget who it was that told me to ask you, and I might have asked it before. They said ask him why he waved at Officer Lieutenant Byrd. Did you wave at him?
No, I didn't wave at him. No. I talked to
Did you
him.
see
Yeah,
him?
yeah. Like I said earlier, we spoke. He asked me if he should call emergency services. And I said, "You just shot her. You idiot. What do you think?"
Oh,
Why do you think he asked you that?
Because he panicked. I said it earlier too. I think he panicked. He panicked when he pulled the trigger. I don't think he had an intention to shoot and kill necessarily anyone. And the fact that he shot it, he fucking had a panic attack. He flipped the fuck out and didn't know what to do next. He wasn't sure if he should call someone or if he even hit anybody. He had this deer in headlight. He's a black dude, but all I could see was the whites of his eyes. In the immediate aftermath, I was like, fuck. He
So
looks
What's
terrified.
interesting is no one else in the room had a panic attack when they heard a gun go off in an echo chamber.
I know, but no one else shot the freaking bullet either. He did. And so I think he had a realization of consequence immediately afterwards that I shot and killed someone. And there's plenty of law enforcement officers who've said afterward there was no reason to do that. That was not any kind of normal procedure. That's not how you're supposed to handle that. You don't shoot to kill or even shoot someone crawling through a window. There's just
no,
no reason.
dude, I don't
but
know. Every
Tom,
cop is trained to shoot center mass to kill.
yeah, if you're going to shoot somebody, you're shooting to kill. But I'd like to know, because I've never seen this. What did he do in the immediate aftermath? Did he stay around? Did he flee? What were Bird's actions after murdering Ashley Babbitt?
Other than the interaction I had, I don't know where he went right after or anything. I just know that when I turned around after filming and he was standing there behind me, and I was a little surprised, like, who is this? And he was asking me if we need emergency service, and I was just like, what like, what question is this? You know what I mean? What do you mean? Do we need? Do we need?
Yeah,
Of course we need. Like, if you
yeah.
pull the trigger, you already know. You're not asking that question. You know someone is on the ground. You could
He
see
should
the
have called it
scene.
right away.
So it's not like there's some big mystery where he's like, I don't know if I hit anybody. He knows what happened because he can see it. He's looking at it with us. So there's no reason for him to ask that question. And that's why I assume he freaked out in the first place and shot the gun, because he didn't know how to respond after. And if you do it with any kind of intent, then you would have a follow up ready. You know what I mean? If you're thinking I'm gonna shoot this person, then you know you're gonna call emergency service because you intend to shoot them and you know they're gonna be hurt.
Yeah,
The fact that he didn't even
yeah,
know means he didn't even know if he connected, even though he sees it and he's having a moment of realization. Oh fuck, I might be in trouble. What should I do?
Do you,
Did you
do you,
see? Did you see the two guys that they seem to be friends? I think they knew each other. That were halfway down the stairs, and as soon as she gets shot, one friend pins the other one against the wall, and the other guy puts his hands up and spreads his legs.
No, I haven't seen that. I don't
You
think.
got to watch that
Is
shit,
it?
dude. It's
I
awkward as
I
hell.
might have seen a video. Are they the guys that people call frickin' frack?
Yeah,
All right, I have watched
yeah,
like a documentary on that. It was very like interesting to see the perspective of the people who question the whole scene. So, but I remember
yeah.
that's
That
kind of a
was
humorous
probably
name for them, frickin'
Woo's
frag.
News?
Woo's
Yeah,
News.
that
Yeah,
guy.
that was.
I'll be honest. Before I got arrested, that video, and I am a video editor and content creator and all of that, so I know how easy it is to manipulate footage. But I'll admit, the first time I watched that, I I was like, holy shit, the whole thing was fake. And so it's interesting to, and I don't feel that way now. I think there are a lot of questions about what happened, but I appreciate your candor and willingness to talk about this. Do you think that Michael Byrd should face criminal charges for murdering Ashley Babbitt?
He should be in prison for the rest of his life.
Great.
I
I agree.
don't think he should be a free man, and I am happy to testify at any trial in the future in person as a witness on everything that I saw that day, so that justice can be served properly, should that ever arise. Anything I'm doing
Yeah,
will
dude.
become a backup, and that will be